Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Great to have everyone here. We had a bit of an audio issue earlier today when we did a news update, breaking news update around just to be around 2 o'clock this afternoon. We came on live with Dragon at McGill University because the university's request for an injunction to clear out that pro-Palestinian encampment failed. So we have a whole new chapter unfolding there now on campus, and we're going to go back live to Dragon in just a moment to get the latest on that story. We were there when they held a news conference earlier today, and he's back on the scene tonight with more new information. Also, we'll bring you up to date on what's going on with the wildfire situation out in Western Canada. Fort McMurray in jeopardy tonight. Trump, Biden, they're going to debate. We'll give you the details on that, but where does RFK Jr. fit into the whole picture? The Prime Minister of Slovakia, an attempt on his life. Victoria's Secret, they're going to have a fashion show again after a bit of an absence. And we have a feature interview coming up with one of our favorite guests who returns tonight, Derek Smith, who will soon be running for mayor out in Calgary. Will talk to us about an effort that didn't quite succeed earlier this week to have the current mayor of Calgary recalled. We'll also take a look at some interesting and unique things happening municipally in Calgary that are going to potentially have a major impact on the way municipal politics is conducted across Canada, in every municipality possibly. Real big change coming up there for the next election. It isn't just a local story. This is national in scope. We'll get into it with him in our feature interview coming up very shortly right here on the Maverick News Channel. But we'll take a quick break and come back on the other side with Dragon at McGill University.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
I also forgot to mention that we'll talk about the unveiling of the first official portrait of King Charles. Some people love him, some people don't love him, some people love to hate him. In any case, we'll show you the new painting, and maybe we'll open it up to a discussion on that tonight. But first, let's go to McGill University. Hello, Dragon. Welcome back, sir.
What's up, sir? How are you today?
Outstanding. And you did a great job earlier today covering that news conference at McGill, where we saw the protesters celebrating a court ruling. The university's request for an injunction to clear out the encampment there has failed. What's happening on the scene there tonight?
Well, celebrating they were actually, and pretty loudly. Now we We have about, I would say, 110 person around in the campus surrounding me. So, yeah, it's a beautiful day to protest and, express our freedom of speech again.
Well, that's what you're all about. That's what this channel is all about. It's about free speech. The question is, what are the limits on free speech in any given scenario? And that is really what is playing out there on campus tonight. You have a balancing act that's taking place. A balance needs to be struck between people's right to free speech, right to free expression, right to protest, versus property rights, the rights of the university to maintain and enjoy its property and share that property in appropriate fashion with the public, since it's a publicly funded institution. These are complex questions, and that's what's really playing out there today. And this was sort of I don't know if it's fair to say it's precedent setting, but it is a milestone decision because this really does come down very firmly on the side of the protesters, at least for the moment. There is some gray area in the language that was used in today's court ruling, but at the news conference today, just describe the scene there, Dragon. Tell us kind of how that transformed. How much media coverage did it receive? How was the news conference conducted? And then we'll run a brief clip from earlier today from the news conference itself.
Media-wise, I think there were about 6 mainstream media on the scene. I was probably the only free and independent media, Maverick here. So, yeah, this is pretty much that. What else? Well, the intention were pretty much clear that they are not going away till probable injunction being made. Is there any thing that is going to happen from there? As are they going to leave with no problem, or that? I mean, that I don't know. I did try to ask, but they didn't want it to come in on this one.
Yes. So the protesters saying that they're going to stay as long as it takes, and what they want is divestment. They want the university to divest in any company. They want them to take their investments out of any company that I guess has an interest in defense spending, the military-industrial complex, in weapons, anything that supports Israel or the Zionist movement, as they.
I did my research actually, and there's one of the head of McGill University, if I do remember his name, is Deep Asani or Sani. Actually, this person actually is one of the head of the university, and also part of the WEF. And basically what he's doing is taking the funds of those students here and integrate it or fund some a company or a movement called the NRI from India. So basically, they are pro-weaponized and warfare. It's a warfare type of organization.
What is the NRI? What are you referring to?
I got to look it up for you actually, because I did add actually a link of it. I don't know if I did send it to you on actually on the text that we use usually.
So
I'll look it up real quick.
NRI means he's a non-resident Indian, is what it stands for.
Okay.
That's all that it means.
Yeah,
It means
but
that he
I mean,
basically he has citizenship in India, but he's living in Canada. So I think what it basically means, if I'm understanding it correctly, is he just has dual citizenship, Dragon. That's all it means.
yeah, but what I meant.
You're talking about Deep Saini, who is the head of the university. He's the president of the university, and he's been in the administration of a number of universities, as I understand it. So, I think he was the head of the university in Australia, president there of the university, and I think he was vice chancellor. I'm just going to look him up here. He's
Actually, he was.
yeah, so he's had leadership roles in a number of post-secondary institutions. He has a doctor of philosophy and plant physiology. I think what they're really mostly upset with, frankly, is that after October 7th, he came out and made a statement condemning the attack by Hamas on Israel. And he called it a heinous act. So I'm sure that the protesters, well, I know that they took exception to that. There was public pushback on his comments at that time. And now this has evolved into this encampment. And I think they
because what they are chanting and actually, I would say, accusing Deep is that he has some ties with some organization, and because of his funding, there's people in Israel or Palestine that has been killed, and this is where the frustration is getting heard from them.
Yes, so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, every university has investments, and they receive donations from a variety of sources, and of course they have, their faculty, and they have pension funds, and of course any organization like this on at least some level runs as a business, so they do have a variety of investments in order to fund a lot of the programs that they run at the university. In order to make these programs work, they have to fund them. Anyway, let's go to today's news conference, and we'll run a little bit of what that looked like.
I am here today on behalf of SPHR McGill on May 15th, which marks 76 years of an ongoing Nakba, but also on behalf of the students worldwide who have built these encampments to challenge our institutions who use our tuition money to invest in companies complicit in genocide and occupation. In a historic win this morning, the court rejected McGill's request for an injunction to dismantle the encampment and recognize the students' rights for free speech and demonstration. This sets an incredible precedent not only for the McGill community, but for the Palestinian movement at large, which despite attempts of defamation and repression, has refused to be stifled. This win transcends the court and is contextualized within the broader student movement that is refusing to be silenced. The court itself placed this encampment within this context, and I quote from the injunction ruling, considering, for the sake of context, that the demonstrators' action is part of a North American movement present in several dozen universities in the United States in connection with the events underway in the Gaza Strip, where tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed, injured, or dispossessed by the Israeli army. We hope that this court's decision teaches McGill that exercising exceptional measures to repress its own students through legal means instead of meeting their demands is more costly. From moving convocation for $700,000 and dragging its students into pointless legal battles, they have proven to be ill-founded rather than just divesting existing investments that are actively perpetrating massacres in Gaza today. The court's ruling reaffirms that what we have been saying for 19 days, which is that this encampment will only end when the McGill administration meets our demands of material divestment that would stop the massacres unfolding in Gaza. McGill has the chance to be on the right side of history, and we have given them every opportunity to do so, and they continuously refuse to do so.
Okay, so that was the initial speaker, and there she was making a direct reference to those investments that we were just talking about, saying they're going to stay until their demands are met, and that's where the balancing act comes in, because as we've been talking about over the last few nights, it is a question of property rights versus people's right to protest and freedom of expression. And the judge is trying to find that balance. Now, all we're really dealing with here at this point is, at this level, it's just an injunction. So it's not like a Supreme Court decision or anything on that level. So anything that goes on here, any decision today can still be challenged, appealed. And I expect we will probably see that they're going to do something to respond to this. But in court today, the judge said that the complainants, the university, failed to show an urgent need to dismantle the encampment, and acknowledged that there would be reason to consider an evolution of the right to freedom of expression to include peaceful occupation. So acknowledging that, there was in the previous ruling, because there was another attempt by two students to get an injunction, two Jewish students to get an injunction. It failed as well. But even in that ruling, the judge did acknowledge that what we have going on here is an occupation. But the university hasn't shown an urgent need to have it dismantled. And these judges are saying that there still needs to be further discussion to explore these issues, to come to an ultimate decision on finding that balance between property rights and the need for the university to be able to maintain that property and the rights of the protesters. Back to you.
Yeah, well, what I've heard, it's pretty much what you have said. And they are not eager to go near now. I mean, they're just staying. And they have some people to help them with the sanitization, so that's probably a good thing to say, because actually, well, it's a campman, so anything goes on around there. But yeah, they're pretty much getting the help they need, I think. They are prepared to stay all summer if they need to, but let's just hope that an agreement will be met sometimes.
All right, so we did hear from the protesters today during the news conference that they held. They were saying the security for the university was blocking deliveries of some equipment and supplies that they were trying to bring into the encampment. And again, I'll ask you tonight, as you look at things there, Dragon, do you think that they are well supplied? Are they dug in? Are they able to stay there for an extended period?
Well, I do think so, but actually I haven't seen anyone being blocked or supplies being blocked neither. So I should have probably been there earlier. But yeah, this is what it is. Tomorrow I might just come around here pretty early in the morning and look at what's going on now on a pretty long day basis.
The other issue is access. I mean, they are occupying the space, but at times they're going beyond that. Like, they've seized the property, the front lawn of the university. They're restricting access. Some people they're not allowing to access the property. So we did hear them say, even during the news conference, that media will not be allowed into the encampment. Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, what they don't want is that we kind of probably bring anything unsanitary around, or probably, it's kind of, I would probably also advocate for the fact that they are sleeping and living in those quarters, right? So basically, it's like if I would go into your home with my camera and just, film around, probably not a...
But the issue is that, I mean, it's supposed to, their argument is that they're allowed to be there and they're allowed to have an encampment because they're saying it's a common area or a public space that they help to pay for with their tuition and with tax dollars, okay? But what they're doing is they're restricting access to other members of the public. They've taken over the space and they're saying, no, only us. Nobody else, unless we approve, only people we approve of can come into this public space. So,
No, it's true that it's a legal issue per se. Yeah.
yes.
Because
So,
I wouldn't be allowed to get in there if they don't want me in. Actually,
right.
I've tried this 2 days earlier and they just don't want me. And if I can probably sometime meet someone, it's not going to be inside the encampment. So,
Right. So I mean, this is where I think that the line gets crossed, in my view, from a legal perspective. Right?
yeah,
They've seized the property. Like if the university, which has legal title to the property and is legally obligated, has an obligation to maintain the university, to also make sure that the public has access to it in a proper and lawful manner. That meaning any member of the public, and certainly the students and faculty, have proper access at different levels to the property, to the buildings, to the front lawn, to the common areas. It's their obligation to do that, but the protesters have moved in. They've literally moved in. They're occupying the space. They're restricting access. So at some point, the courts have to address that because that's a violation of everyone else's rights. Now they've seized property that they actually have no legal title to, and
yeah,
they're
I do agree with
preventing
that.
like, people like yourself from just walking on the front lawn of the university, which is supposed to be a public space, which is the foundation for their entire argument for them to be there. They get to have free speech. They get to occupy the land at the university, but you're not allowed. You're being excluded. You're a taxpayer as well. You're a citizen of the country as well. And they're saying that you're not allowed to go into that common area and that public space. So the courts have to address that at some point because that's what those two Jewish students were asserting as well, I think, on some level in their original request for an injunction. They're saying that their access to the space is also being restricted. That's a serious legal point.
It's true. It's a serious point, and I will agree with that because, I mean, there's a part of here that I can access anywhere, but there's, I would say, certain unclosed area where, yeah, I shouldn't be here, and probably I'm probably too close for their own comfort right now.
Yeah.
I just don't even know, but I just kind of cleared off my part from them because they are probably like 50 meter away from there, so I'm not too close from them, and I don't threat anyone.
The other interesting thing in today's ruling is that they're making reference to these protests going on in the United States. So and the fact that this is some sort of an international kind of protest. So they're applying sort of an international standard, a U.S. standard, or at least the precedents being set, or the normalization, I guess, of occupations at university campuses to Canada. I'm not even sure if that has any legal merit here or how much weight that should even take. If you're talking about a Canadian court under Canadian law dealing with something at the local level and property that's controlled by a university in Canada, I'm not sure how much weight any court should really be giving to what is happening in other countries, but they're using that as some sort of a precedent to look to. And I know that our courts do look to some degree to external courts in other countries for legal guidance when it comes to precedents that have been set. But I'm just not sure how much weight that should be given to those protests in the Canadian context. It's an interesting argument.
Yeah, it is. And when you see this been going for about 3 weeks and plus now, when you think about the truckers, who has been unprecedented in a way, we've been warning the government that, the truckers were coming down to Ottawa for a long time before they get in a way. So it was prepared, legally probably also. And when you take all that in a matter, if you will, it's kind of weird because they came in like out of nowhere, and now we do respect that kind of freedom of expression where the trucker were doing the same thing with Bouncy Castle and basically got the army and the boots on the ground to get them out.
Yeah, I mean, I see the similarities there. I certainly do. And I know that when it comes to setting up an encampment like that, like we're seeing here, or even with bouncy castles, and they did set up structures even during the Freedom Convoy, but there is a significant difference between the two protests. That difference, in my mind, is one, the Freedom Convoy was taking place on public streets at the seat of government on Parliament Hill. And in addition, not on private, because technically the university is private property, controlled by the university with public money to some degree, and also private donations. So it's a mix of public and private ownership, if you want to look at it in that way. Plus, the students have they are stakeholders here. Okay, so if you're talking about the students themselves, they have a stake in the university. So there's that to be considered here as well, but it's still private property. With the Freedom Convoy, that was entirely on public streets. Public area, not common area, public area. They were not on Parliament Hill, per se. They weren't on the lawn of the Parliament buildings, per se. And the other major difference was, I did not see at any time the truckers preventing anyone from accessing any area in Ottawa. People were allowed to walk down there. Now, of course, you had a traffic jam to some degree, but even then they left some emergency lanes open. They worked with police and first responders to make sure that things were safe and lanes were kept open so emergency vehicles could still get around. They didn't block anyone's access during the Freedom Convoy. They didn't say, oh, you can come in, but you can't. There was, as far as I saw, none of that going on. We saw some propaganda.
Which leave a good
them
question.
In a negative light, but I see a serious difference between the two.
Yeah, but you leave a good question there. I mean, how organized are they with the police or the SPVM, right? I mean, they are probably having certain qui pro quo around, or some kind of pourparlers, if you will.
Well, where do you see police tonight? Where are they situated?
Always situated at the same place, at the corner of Sherbrooke and Saint-Urbain, just right here.
Right.
So.
And they're not actually on university property, right? They're sitting off.
No.
Right, and that's because they understand that the university is private property. So they're only going to intervene if requested to do so, which is what the university was doing today. They wanted police to come in and assist them in removing the encampment, but police can't, because they now have this injunction, which was rejected, so they have no legal basis with which to move forward. So this really prevents police from going in. It prevents them now, really, from taking any action, because if they were to do so, it would be deemed an illegal act by police, a violation of the protesters' rights on at least some level. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I will also add that if they are not prepared yet to do some arrestation in well-informed ways, I would say that they are actually looking into the basis of how we can probably arrest them if the injunction at some point get passed. So,
see, I think the really dangerous thing that's going on here is that while there isn't like a hard and fast legal precedent that has been set here today, what we're seeing is the normalization of occupations. And we've seen it over time. Our court today at this level, now this is not, again, the Supreme Court by any means, but they've looked even south of the border to the United States, and they've said, well, this kind of thing goes on all the time. University protests happen, and not just protests, but occupations. So they're normalizing the violation of property rights through occupations. And there is specific language in today's ruling making reference to this. And I think that is a dangerous thing, because what they're saying is essentially property rights take a back seat to someone's right to protest. And that means that now it's open season. So you could have someone essentially set up a protest on your front lawn at your house because they don't like something you've done at that level. Now, I'm maybe not quite to that level yet because, there's maybe not a common area there, but you could apply this to a shopping mall. You could have protesters move into a shopping mall. That would be a better example. And set up an encampment in the middle of a shopping mall.
Yep.
And just sit there for weeks on end, maybe even years. I don't know if I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's right. I think, it's just my personal opinion. And from what I'm observing, I think that to a great degree, what they're doing here is lawful. And they should be allowed to continue doing what they're doing. But when you're restricting access and prohibiting other people from enjoying the same common area, which is supposed to be open to the public, that's a seizure, that's an occupation, and it's crossing the line because you're violating other people's rights.
Yep. And where I see probably where the judge is agreeing with something is that, well, in a campus, there's always some kind of protest at some point, They're protesting about whatever school board are not doing their job or something else. So, or even some political views, because, some of them will or are in the politics student. So if they are politics student, it's their job probably to start to act as a protester at some point, which they will find that.
And
I see that every year.
There's real irony here in my mind because they're protesting, saying that Israel is an illegal occupier of land, and they're protesting by illegally occupying land on a university campus and restricting access to other people coming in, preventing other members of the public from accessing public property. And when I think about what happened with the truckers, I don't ever remember the truckers preventing media at any point from going anywhere during the Freedom Convoy protest. They maybe didn't want to speak to some of those reporters and maybe refused a lot of the people, but they still invited them to news conferences. They allowed them to just kind of walk wherever they wanted to go. They didn't restrict access.
Well, I was allowed to be part of the press conference earlier, which they invited me because actually I went to see, at this tent, I went on the corner there and asked one of the guy out of camera and everything. I was just asking politely if I can have an interview with one of the organizer. So, sorry. But I came up with that idea, and they said, "Okay, look, we have a press conference in about an hour," which basically came 2 hours later. But I was there, and eager to ask some question.
And did a great job. Let's go back and watch a little bit more of it here. And here's the next speaker.
Merci. On va maintenant écouter d'une représentatrice de l'encampement des étudiants ici à McGill, des voix juives indépendantes à McGill. We will now be hearing from a representative of IJD McGill and a representative of the student encampment. Je suis ici aujourd'hui au nom de Independent Jewish Voices McGill, en tant qu'étudiant juif anti-zioniste. Ce matin, le tribunal a...
Get past the French, because I know we don't have many French. Okay, here we go.
On the basis of freedom of speech, and placed this demonstration within the context of 76 years of an ongoing occupation, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. It is for these reasons that we built this encampment, to stop our tuition money from funding these crimes. Our demands are realizable and simple. We want to move money from unethical companies that invest in war, occupation, and genocide to ethical companies. Instead, McGill has exhausted resources and finances to repress the movement. It has taken legal action, threatened state violence, and the forced removal of the McGill community for peacefully protesting against the genocide, which has martyred over 40,000 people. 15,000 of whom are children. The courts have affirmed that it's cheaper for the McGill administration to stop going after its students through legal means and violent efforts. Instead, it's better to put their energy into divestment methods that would stop the killing of innocent children in Gaza. This comes after 19 days of the administration smearing our protest encampment with claims of anti-Semitism, unlivable conditions, or violence. The goals of such efforts are clear: to diminish and silence the voices of the majority of students who stand in unprecedented numbers against the ongoing genocide and the occupation of the Palestinian people. McGill's numerous attempts to deflect from the real issue, according to the court, the administration's requests for the injunction have been, and I quote, either on their face ill-founded or ancillary to the dismantling order. We welcome the court's decision. We are proud to have set the precedent to McGill that it is the right of people to protest against their universities and to ensure free speech as part of their academic institutions. Next.
Okay. So, there's another issue here. She used the word martyred. She said that all those people have been martyred. Well, Israel didn't martyr them. Hamas martyred them. Hamas basically used the civilians as human shields, in some cases preventing the people from leaving Gaza so that they were caught in the line of fire. When you use that word martyred, it means that it's an admission and an acknowledgement of the ideology that precipitated the entire events that came before, during, and after October 7th. Those people were martyred. But it wasn't Israel that went in and turned them into martyrs. It's Hamas that uses those people as martyrs. They hold the victims up, and they look at that's how martyrdom works. They use the deaths as a public relations propaganda tool in order to generate public sympathy. So it's Hamas that's martyring them, not Israel. It does Israel no good to have its image damaged with all of that death. The other issue is here, and this is something that I've not even heard a single syllable spoken of tonight, or at any point over the last few days on the McGill campus, Dragon. And that's, what about the hostages? All those hostages taken on October 7th, many of them still in captivity. And the main reason a lot of them aren't in captivity anymore or being incarcerated by Hamas is because a lot of them have been killed. In fact, it's not even clear how many might still be alive, including Americans who are being held over there still. Did anyone at any point today talk about the hostages still being held?
Yeah.
Any talk of that?
Well, it's true. And when you think about martyr, well, I will agree on this that, well, when you're protesting like this and getting arrested and probably beat up by the police, at some point, you're become the martyr for some martyrs. So basically, it's not a good thing. I mean, it's not a win-win.
It's hard for us to understand here, if you're Christian or if you just grew up in the West like I have. It's hard to understand that martyrdom ideology or mentality, right? It's the same psychological perspective that comes with kamikaze pilots during World War II, suicide bombers, terrorist attacks where people sacrifice themselves or even set themselves on fire in order to make a political statement. It's self-sacrifice with the belief that you're going to be admitted directly into heaven, regardless of any past sins that you may have committed. So when they're using the word martyrdom, that's really what it is. And we should be very clear about that.
Yeah, it's a religious way to basically get away with killing yourself for the sin that you have committed, for the sin of everyone. A little bit like in you, Jesus.
And I say all these things is simply because I'm here sort of playing the devil's advocate to a degree to provide some balance here, because I'm not hearing anyone there today or yesterday or the day before that talk about any of these aspects certainly not from the encampment itself. I understand the perspective that they're bringing forward as well. And do you think that their message is getting out? Do you think that their campaign there has been effective?
Yeah, well, they think it's effective because basically the injunction hasn't been passed. So for them, it's like our message has passed and we are winning. Actually, earlier today, they have been saying day by day we're winning.
So, because of the occupation that's taking place, the university has been forced to move convocation off university property at a cost of nearly $1 million, as I understand it. At least somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million has to be spent so they can do this off campus.
So it's a lot of money for the taxpayer.
Well, for not so much for the taxpayer directly, but for the university itself. The university will need to pay for that. That will come out of the general funds someplace from the donations. And it again speaks to the violation of the university's property rights. They can't even access their own property to conduct their regular affairs, their regular annual convocation. So they can't even do that on campus now because it's been seized. If that isn't a graphic illustration of the reality of it, then I don't know what is.
And I will say also, well, they want the university to diverse their, well, that's a way to make them diverse if they want them to.
Right.
In a comical way.
So at some point, they'll have to get back to normal. They have to, at some point, there has to be an end to this. Now, we could get there if the university bends their knee and gives in to the demands and divests in any of these companies that the protesters deem to be inappropriate or unethical. So you can end it that way, I guess. But then I guess they'd have to open up the books to the, which I think are public anyway, but they'd have to I guess let the protesters go down and pick and choose all the companies that the university is allowed to invest in. So now the protesters get to approve or disapprove of the way that the university handles the donations and the funds and the way that the budget is run?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I ask myself, how would that work? It's kind of, yeah, it's...
So that's one possible end to the occupation, the protest there. I guess the other thing is, short of that, this is going to carry on. It might expand in size. Do you think this is likely to get bigger? Are they emboldened now that they've had this court ruling?
Well, their message has been kind of emboldened. They were screaming louder than usual today, and they told to the press conference that if the size of the encampment or people comes in for some reason, and they will agree for any protester supporter probably to comes in and expand the encampment. So.
Right. So I guess the other thing that's going to be happening is, and I think this has been happening on some level already, municipal officials are taking note of all of this. I think they've had the fire department down there already to make sure that this encampment is safe, that there's no fire hazard. Of course, if you have people in tents and maybe cooking on site or doing other things, or if there's any electricity there, if there's any fire hazard at all, that would be an issue. Sanitary issues might come into play here. The municipality will be looking at all of these things. And of course, there's a bylaw violation here. It's a bunch of different bylaw violations. You're only allowed to camp in certain locations. Camping is not really allowed in a place like that. But because it's a protest, some of those rules, those local bylaws, I think, are circumvented and displaced by the larger issues of free speech and freedom of expression. Yeah.
Well, I've heard that there were a third cell around Sherbrooke University that has been open for 2 days, and actually I've been looking for it. didn't found it. UCAM, that's the second cell. At some point, probably they will join this cell here and expand from this point. The other thought I had, because I've seen one or two homeless people that has a tent, but is actually living not in the campment, but next to the campment, right? So they are using that as, oh, I'm a supporter now, you know. So they come in, stick around, and they sleep around all night just next
So-
to the encampment. So
you're
basically, you see the encampment is there, but one of those two tents actually is actually a homeless guy who actually camping around here for
Sure,
the
maybe
summer.
just let's turn the camera and keep that on the encampment if you don't mind doing that, and just stand with that behind you when you're speaking to us, so just so we can have a visual reference of what it is we're dealing with here. So you're saying that you have homeless people.
Yeah, there's one or two around that actually camp. Actually, you see the camp is all right here, right? So you got the entrance of the camp where there's two little like tents here.
Yeah, pan
So-
over so we see more of the camp and not so much the signs.
So yeah, you see the tent here. So that's the entrance and the square where actually they do the chanting. So the entrance for the campment is around here. So the campment is also on this side. You got two tents here. And one of those actually, I think, is at one of the homeless guy that I've met around here many times. And
Can you just turn the camera, keep it on the encampment, and then just stand? Yeah, then stand in front of the camera so it's behind you. That's right. Now we can see the camp.
so
There
that's
we go.
better.
Yeah,
So that's the two other, well, camp that you can see.
excellent.
Little campers.
So, I'm all for free speech and anybody's right to protest. There are limits on these things. The courts, I think, are trying to give a wide degree of latitude to the protesters, which is, I think, a feather in the cap of the government in a way, because you do want to proceed with these things in a cautious manner, not expedite the removal sometimes. But I would say that at the federal level, as if this thing escalates in the courts, at some point the university will get an injunction to have this encampment removed, because we've seen it repeatedly through history. We've seen it on other campuses. Out in Western Canada, we've seen this happen with police moving in and removing protesters. So there is legal precedent for that happening. I think it's just a matter of time. And I think the next step, honestly, what you're probably going to see is the municipality will be called in and they will try to find bylaw violations in order to put pressure on the protesters to have them move out, saying that this is a fire code issue or this is a some other municipal bylaw that you're violating here. If you don't move out, we're going to give you a ticket. It'll be that kind of thing maybe at the next level. I'm not sure, but that's certainly a set of tools that they have at their disposal.
Yeah, I was thinking the same actually. They will probably just find a way to, nimble around the laws and make that partly legal, and for that they will make them go and remove them, if hopefully peacefully.
And all these protesters, at least most of them, seem to still have their faces covered. They don't want to be, they don't want to appear on video. They've made that very clear. They said that again during the news conference today. Why do you think they don't want their faces shown?
I've been heard of they are fearing of doxing. They are fearing for some that people just find them and express their angriness about their point of view. So they want to keep their point of view kind of anonymous, mostly.
Very interesting. Well, sir, anything you'd like to add, Dragon, tonight, or think that we might be missing?
I know it's probably all that. So I will wish and invite everyone to follow me on Twitter at the One Rising Dragon on Twitter, Dragon on Facebook, and you got also the same name on YouTube. So I will wish you all a good night, and I hope you did enjoy the perfect and beautiful report that I done for you.
All right. Thank
Almost
you.
perfect.
You did a great job today. Thank you, Dragon.
Take care,
Appreciate your
guys.
help as always. All right. I'll be right back, folks, on the other side.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And I am back, and Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico is fighting for his life tonight after an assassination attempt. He's a populist prime minister. He was shot multiple times in an attempted assassination. Slovak Defense Minister Robert Kalinek has told reporters that doctors operated into the evening, and Fico's condition is extremely serious. So we have a video of this incident. I'll bring it up here for you so you can see the mayhem that unfolded right as the shooting took place. This makes me very uneasy. Not clear what else is going on politically behind the scenes with this. This is potentially very destabilizing. You know, I think we need to look at this over the next few days to see if anything more comes of this. We're seeing other world leaders condemning this attack. Fico was elected in October, just this past October, as leader of the leftist SMER party, meaning direction. He was, I guess, standing on a pro-Russian, anti-American populist platform, which I think, with many of you in the audience, probably would be a popular political stance these days. He's a veteran politician. He'd already served as prime minister twice, returned to politics, took on this role after being elected again. He has faced criticism from thousands of Slovaks who railed against a plan to overhaul public radio and television. Population of the country only for 5.4 million. But those protests were fueled by fears that of government control and a shift away from pro-Western ties. This is an echo of the loud chorus of voices shouting for change around the world, I would say. And what we're seeing here, I think, is potentially very destabilizing. Who was really behind this? We'll find out more in the days ahead. everyone's condemning it, but who really was behind this act? When we find out, that will determine how much we need to worry, I think. Echoes of World War I. And the winds of change seem to be blowing globally. Also tonight, Trump and Biden have agreed to debate. Now, the first debate is going to be held without an audience. And supposed to be held just between Trump and Biden. Some saber rattling there on the political front with Biden. He finally gave in and said, yes, I will debate you. So this is going to happen in late June and September, specifically June 27th and September 10th. It'll be held at, it'll be like a 9 p.m. Eastern event. Again, no audience, just mano a mano. And there is some talk. I think there's a potential pathway to RFK Jr. being included in the debates, or maybe one of the debates. Not really clear. CNN has some guidelines set up. The people who oversee the rules for the debate also have some criteria in place that have to be met, and it looks like RFK Jr. is within, within, maybe that's not the right way to phrase it. He's close to achieving the level or the results that would be required, getting the level of support and being on enough ballots, etc., in order to qualify to be part of the debate. But it still has to be something that all parties agree to, and Biden has made it clear that he will only debate Trump one-on-one. RFK Jr. has the most to gain, I would say, if they allow him to participate in a three-way debate. The other candidates, the other independents, they're not polling anywhere near close enough to be relevant or, in my view, be included in this, because most of them are only around, 1%, maybe not even that much, 2%. You take Jill Stein and Cornel West, and there just isn't enough support there. They just don't have it. RFK Jr., on the other hand, as far as I'm seeing, he's polling fairly consistently around 15, in some cases maybe even 20%. So he is a factor in this, most definitely. When you take that much of the public support, that many votes out of the system, and give it to an independent candidate like that, you have yourself a disruptor, a kingmaker, and potentially a dark horse candidate who can come right up from behind, maybe even win the darn thing if something really crazy happens, like one of these other two candidates falls off the ballot for some reason. And at their age, who knows? Anything can happen. In fact, anything at all can happen, and we still have a long way to go before November. So, a lot of ground to cover. This amount of time in politics is like an eternity. We'll continue to follow that story, of course, and who knows? Maybe RFK will get a kick at the can. Now, let's take a look at this painting, shall we? Of King Charles, the first official portrait of the king. He's the monarchy, not nearly as popular as it used to be. And this painting, meeting with a lot of criticism. I think that's fair. Let's show you the unveiling first. Here he is. Very interesting style, but it's bland. And yet the colors are engaging. I wouldn't say that the colors are particularly pleasing, but definitely engaging because the color scheme is bright. Some would say it's almost like blood, which is something that some people are not happy about. Let's bring this up here, get you a closer picture of just the painting itself. So there it is there on X. I don't know. What do you guys think of that? I personally, I don't care for the style. Maybe not so much the style, but this particular painting, I don't care for it. The color scheme, I don't know why he would pick those. I don't like the, I don't think it really is a reflection of what King Charles is. Maybe in the artist's mind, it is. What do I get out of that? He's obscure. He fades into the background. His face emerges. There's a butterfly in the image. I think that is a, how can I put this? It's a symbol. It's a way of depicting the evolution or the metamorphosis of Charles from a prince into a king. Just over his shoulder, the right shoulder of the king, just to the left when you're looking at him, there's a butterfly over his shoulder. That indicates a metamorphosis. But beyond that, I don't think it captures much about King Charles. Maybe in that way it is an accurate depiction, because he doesn't strike me as, so far, being a king that is on a mission to make major changes, even though the world is being transformed around him. I get the feeling in many respects that King Charles is just kind of sleepwalking through his reign, at least thus far. He's just going through the motions, maybe because of his age and his medical condition. He is battling cancer, and his life devoted to the monarchy as a prince, always being engaged in the ceremony of royalty. Maybe he doesn't have a full perspective on what he could be achieving as king. So in that way, maybe it is an accurate depiction, a metaphor for a king who basically is just sitting there like wallpaper, fading into the background. And maybe that's part of it too. He is fading into the background over time as more and more countries decouple from the monarchy, declare their independence. We see a lot of people, even here in Canada, the country really split on whether we should maintain our ties with the monarchy or split away and become more independent. It's just about split down the middle, maybe even more 60-40 these days, with a lot of people wanting to decouple, a lot of people calling almost for revolution. But the truth is, if you want to separate from the monarchy, if you want to do that these days, pretty much all you have to do is just ask. We've seen other countries do just that. Then the monarchy continues to fade and diminish into the background. The British Empire, over time, no longer as not as powerful as it once was. Certainly not during the 1700s, the 1800s, when the early explorers came to the New World, as it were, where people were sold essentially a lie about what this place was like or is like. There were advertisements given to people with palm trees on them, telling people that this was a utopia, a paradise, a tropical paradise. It's sort of true if you went very far south, someplace more like Florida. But even there, they have wicked storms. Up here, though, the first to arrive found out just how brutal it is here. A lot of them died. It's a miracle any survived, honestly. Encountered wilderness and harsh winters. Very tough to come by. But now, all these centuries later, King Charles sitting on the throne, standing there. And yeah, he's just kind of like his whole body, everything about him in this painting, fading, just obscure. There, his face can be seen. His hands, they're still, I guess, capable as a king. And his face, prominent, so he can be seen, but you have to look for him. Every other aspect of the kingdom fading into the background. That's what I get out of that. Whether that was the intent of the artist, I don't know. So the artist is painter Jonathan Yeo. He's kind of an unassuming character himself. Here, I have a picture of him, actually. Standing there with Prince Charles. So you better get a better look at him. He's painted many celebrities. A painter to the stars and a royalty. Here it is. Jonathan Yeo. First official portrait of King Charles. Just going to look in the chat. What do you guys think of that painting? I'm just taking a look here. Lori says it's a weird portrait for a king. It is a weird portrait. Some people saying that those colors are maybe a symbolic of blood. I don't get that from it, but you know, it's very, in a way, impressionistic. It's a combination of styles is what I'm getting from it. And I don't know. I'm not as bent out of shape about the monarchy as a lot of other people. If we stay connected, we stay connected. If we don't, we don't. I don't really think that it would have too much of an impact on the country one way or the other, honestly. But yeah, and Lori's saying, what about the hands? They look weird. I think it's because he's wearing gloves. That's what I think it is. Like riding gloves. Danny says he's a bloodsucker in dreamland. Yeah, that's what some people are getting out of it. And Marty says it's just awful. Jilly Bean says it's a zoom-in satanic. Andrew says everything has significance. Helena says she hates it. The reviews are not favorable. Oh, man. Yeah, people don't like it. Okay, you guys don't like the painting. I can't say I'm a fan of it either, really. It's, I don't like the color scheme. I don't think, it's not complimentary. I don't think it makes the king look very good at all. And Jilly Bean just says, evil! Yeah, I know. That's what a lot of people are getting out of it. Pure evil. It's funny. Let me see what's on Rumble here on the chats there. The Crown says amazing. Evil Ken says this makes me want to go to church. Lindy says it's terrible, but maybe that's what he is. Rosie says Eurovision stage was in the form of a cross and performance is predominantly satanic. We're going to talk more about Eurovision in the days ahead. Raising Wolves says the king is woke. Celtic Love says when you mirror the painting side by side, you can see a demon. I'm not seeing that, but maybe. Stoic teacher says it's communist red. That's an interesting take. Yeah. So, again, American says Mickey Mouse and Michael Jackson wore gloves too. Well, I didn't really see anything positive in there at all. So the verdict is pretty much unanimous. Nobody likes, at least around here, nobody likes the first official portrait of King Charles. Oh man. Oh boy. Poor king. Well, he's not so poor. He has kind of an interesting life. A life of privilege, that's for sure. But I don't know if I'd want his gig. Nah, no privacy there. Every day, public's looking at you, everything you do. It's hard to make a move without somebody taking your picture, following you around. Talk about paparazzi. Wow. Okay, so wildfire situation out in Alberta. We'll take a short break, come back. We'll update you on that.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are Mavericks. We are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right. Situation around Fort McMurray. That's probably the worst situation right now with these wildfires. I think we have about 100 plus burning across the country already. Wildfire season taking hold very early this year. Here's an update just from a short time ago from the Alberta government. Wildfire danger extreme in the Fort McMurray forest area. Alberta Wildfire is currently responding to 2 out-of-control wildfires. A fire ban and off-highway vehicle restriction is now in effect for the Fort McMurray forest area. People are being advised to exercise caution when spending time outdoors, reminding people that wildfires can start and spread very easily in dry grass. Here's a map showing the affected area around Fort McMurray. We also are going to go to a news conference here in Alberta with the Premier and the government officials overseeing the firefighting efforts out there. Here's the map around the Fort McMurray area being affected. And you see that red flame there? Maybe you can't see it. I don't know. It's maybe too small on your screen. But right, just sort of part way to the left, that red blob, you have the red lines outlining that area. That's the fire perimeter. And that fire, they've got that big red flame icon on it. That's an indication that that fire is out of control. It's my understanding that it is now only about 5 kilometers away from Fort McMurray. And back in 2016, the Fort McMurray wildfire at that time was devastating. It swept through the community, forcing the largest wildfire evacuation in Alberta's history. Over 88,000 people were forced from their homes. Now, the fire is spreading largely because of high winds, again, a big problem, dry conditions, many homes destroyed. Initial insurance payouts were estimated to be as much as $9 billion as a result of the fires that swept through Fort McMurray back in 2016. This, of course, is giving rise to concerns about the insurability of properties in some parts of Canada because of these ongoing wildfires. And we're seeing that at least half, maybe even up to 3/4 of them, are the result of people. Arson, careless behavior, a variety of other reasons, but a half to 3/4 associated with activities of people. And a lot of these under investigation. I know that lightning is being blamed for at least some of these wildfires again so far. But a lot of worried people out there tonight in Fort McMurray. Let's go to this news conference with the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, and she has a team behind her, and they're going to bring us up to date on what's happening with these wildfires out in Western Canada.
Minister of Forestry and Parks, Todd Loewen, Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, Mike Ellis, and Minister of Health, Adriana LaGrange, as well as Christy Tucker, Information Unit Manager at Alberta Wildfire, and Stephen Lacroix, Managing Director and Senior Assistant Deputy Minister at the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, to bring a wildfire update. We were relieved to see that wildfire evacuation orders and alerts in Grande Prairie County decreased in scope, but even as that happened, in the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo issued an evacuation order for parts of Fort McMurray in response to a wildfire burning south of the city. As residents rush to leave their homes, I know that this will bring back difficult memories from the devastating fires of 2016. And I'm sure these memories will create fear and uncertainty for many in Fort McMurray, and my sympathy is with everyone facing this situation. But safety must remain our top priority. Our government is constantly monitoring the situation, and our Emergency Management Cabinet Committee met again yesterday evening to be briefed and to plan. It's important that everyone know that we are prepared to do whatever is necessary to keep Albertans safe. This evacuation is a stark reminder that our province lives alongside the threat of wildfires and other national disasters. And let me assure you, our government will have Alberta's back whenever a disaster strikes. To the firefighters braving the flames to defend Fort McMurray and other areas of the province, we appreciate your heroic efforts more than we can say, and we pray for your safe return. And to the residents of Fort McMurray, especially those who've had to evacuate, our government stands with you in your community today and always, and all of Alberta stands with you. Now I'll turn things over to Minister Todd Loewen to provide an update on the current wildfire situation.
This story making international headlines.
Good morning, and thank you for joining me for the wildfire update. I want to start off by thanking Alberta Wildfire Team and municipal firefighters. They have been working extremely hard to protect Albertans and their communities, and we want to thank them for all that they're doing. Despite some areas of the province receiving rain in recent days, wildfire activity has been elevated over the past week. The wildfire near Fort McMurray that we've entered in a unified command with the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo Wood. This fire is classified as out of control, burning over 20,000 hectares. The wildfire near Fort McMurray grew significantly on Tuesday, May 14th, bringing it closer to Fort McMurray and surrounding communities. Wildfire behavior was particularly aggressive due to shifting winds, leading to growth in multiple directions and large smoke columns. Alberta wildfire personnel are actively responding to wildfire, including air and ground suppression efforts and fire guard construction near the northeastern section of the wildfire and along the power line west of town. Heavy equipment operators helped to break up the fuel sources, and we had 3 night vision equipped helicopters as well as air tankers and helicopters dropping water on the active edges of the wildfire. Working with the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, we are actively setting up structural protection in Fort McMurray, Gregoire subdivision, as well as the Gregoire First Nation and industrial facilities. Wildfire personnel work through the night and continue working now to create fire guards and slow the spread of the wildfire. Due to substantial growth and heightened activity, an evacuation order was issued for Beacon Hill, Abasand, Prairie Creek, and Grayling Terrace. An evacuation alert remains in effect for Fort McMurray, Sapre Creek, Gregoire Lake Estates, Fort McMurray First Nations, Anzac, and Rickards Landing Industrial Park. We urge Albertans to follow all local evacuation advisories and orders, and we encourage you to regularly check alberta.ca for status on these alerts. As of as of 2 p.m. today, a fire ban will be in effect in the Fort McMurray and high-level forest areas. Under a fire ban, all outdoor wood fires on public and private land are banned. In addition, an off-highway vehicle restriction will be implemented for the Fort McMurray forest area. Under an OHV restriction, the recreational use of OHVs is prohibited. On average, over the past 5 years, less than 1% of wildfires throughout the province have been caused by an off-highway vehicle. This restriction will help us prevent further human-caused wildfires while fire danger remains high and personnel focus on the larger fire near Fort McMurray. A number of fire restrictions and advisories remain throughout the rest of the province. Visit albertafirebans.ca for more information and a map of the restriction boundaries. It's also crucial that Albertans stay up to date on wildfire risk conditions by consulting the wildfire danger page on alberta.ca. Wildfire danger has increased in recent days, with many areas of the province now experiencing high, very high, or extreme wildfire danger. When conditions like this occur, Albertans are encouraged to stay current on active wildfires and other bans, restrictions, and advisories using the Alberta Wildfire and Alberta Fire Ban apps. Our hearts go out to the families impacted by the evacuation order near Fort McMurray, and please know that we are working to ensure that you can return home safely and as soon as possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Lowen. So good morning, everyone. Alberta continues to see some substantial wildfire activity in northern parts of the province, and it's undoubtedly a challenging time for those communities affected and their residents, and of course, we are all here for them. I want to start off by saying a big thank you to those on the ground. Thank you to Wildfire, who is doing an amazing job keeping the fires at bay. Thank you to Alberta Emergency Management for their work in working with municipality to get evacuated communities to safety. And thank you to the communities themselves, adhering to local alerts, and of course, working with all partners made this difficult situation a little easier for everyone to navigate. Alberta Emergency Management is working closely with all of the impacted communities, and we're committed to providing support and resources as needed to navigate through the situation. There are currently 2 wildfire-related states of local emergency declared. Okay, one for the County of Grand Prairie, and one for the rural municipality of Wood Buffalo. The Fort McMurray First Nation number 468 has also issued a banned council resolution. Yesterday afternoon, the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo issued an evacuation order for the communities of Prairie Creek, Beacon Hill, Abasand, and Grayling Terrace. The Alberta Sheriff's Branch have been assisting the RCMP with evacuations in the impacted neighborhoods, and the estimated number of people evacuated is over 6,000. The Alberta Emergency Management Agency regional and First Nations field officers Wildland Urban Interface field officers and emergency social service officers have also been working in close collaboration with the municipality's Director of Emergency Management and their team. Additionally, an evacuation alert remains in place for other areas of the municipality, and please note that the alerts are different from evacuation orders. They are advisory in nature and are issued to give people time to prepare for potential evacuation if the situation deteriorates. I encourage all residents to visit rwmb.ca, that's rwmb.ca, and stay connected to the municipality for the most up-to-date information on accommodation, evacuation centers, and muster points. The Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo has scheduled a live community update at 11 a.m. this morning and may have some updated information at that time. The County of Grand Prairie's evacuation order has decreased in size, and at this time the estimated number of evacuees is 20. For those under an evacuation order, please register online as an evacuee at emergencyregistration.alberta.ca. Registering as an evacuee will help you access resources and important information like updates and re-entry plans. In addition to the County of Grand Prairie evacuation order, there remains a separate evacuation alert. People in the affected area should still be ready to leave on short notice, and stay tuned to the Grand Prairie Regional Emergency Partnership website for the most up-to-date information on the areas impacted. The Municipal District of Greenview canceled its evacuation order yesterday, but they are still encouraging residents to be prepared to leave again if conditions change, and the municipality's website will continue to have the most up-to-date information. I would also like to remind affected residents wildfire conditions can change and deteriorate rapidly, especially this time of the year. Albertans need to remain vigilant. If you are in the community that's on an evacuation alert, be prepared in case you are asked to evacuate. Take this time to get ready so that you can leave as quickly as possible. Ensure that you have your key belongings, including important travel documents and medication. Pack an emergency kit with enough food and water for a minimum of 72 hours. And make sure that you have a plan for your pets and have some cash on hand to keep your vehicle fueled. Make alternative transportation arrangements if needed. I realize that this is an extremely stressful situation for everyone. Evacuation orders are not made lightly and are in place to protect people. I encourage all Albertans to listen and follow the instructions of local authorities. Our number one priority is, of course, to keep you safe and, of course, all of your loved ones. And with that, I'll pass it over to Christy at Wildfire. Thank you.
Okay, we'll stick with it for just a minute longer.
Thank you, Minister. There are currently 45 there are currently 45 wildfires burning in the forest protection area of Alberta. Our highest priority right now is the wildfire south of Fort McMurray. I'll provide a bit more information to the update that Minister Lowen has provided. The wildfire is classified as MWF017. It is out of control and is now nearly 21,000 hectares in size. The wildfire grew significantly to the northeast yesterday, and it was driven by gusty winds. As of this morning, the closest point of the fire is about 5.5 kilometers from the Fort McMurray landfill and 4.5 kilometers from the intersection of Highway 63 and 881. Night vision helicopters worked overnight to drop water on the fire's active edges and were supported by firefighters on the ground looking for hotspots. Less than 1 millimeter of rain fell on the wildfire overnight. Active fire behavior is expected today, but it should be less than what we saw yesterday, thanks to cooler temperature and weaker winds. Winds from the northwest at 10 kilometers an hour are expected today, which should push the fire away from Fort McMurray and Highway 63. A high of 13 degrees is expected, which will lead to cooler weather and slightly less wildfire activity. Firefighters will be back on the line today and will continue to work to stop the spread of the fire. Helicopters and air tankers are going to be dropping water and retardant on the active edges of the fire, and heavy equipment operators are building fire guards to the southwest of Fort McMurray. Firefighters are also working to complete some of the structural protection on buildings in the Prairie Creek and Beacon Hill neighborhoods, and structure protection was installed on the Rickards Landing Industrial Park, Gregoire Lakes Estates, and Gregoire Lake 176. Alberta Wildfire and the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo have entered into unified command, and we are going to be working together to manage this wildfire. Because of conditions in the northern part of the province, as Minister Lowen said at 2 o'clock this afternoon, a fire ban is coming into effect in the High Level and Fort McMurray areas, as well as an off-highway vehicle restriction in the Fort McMurray area. A fire ban will remain in place in the Grand Prairie area. Help us prevent any more wildfires in areas of high hazard. Follow any bans or restrictions in your area and check albertafirebans.ca to learn more. Thank you.
Okay. That is the bulk of the information. And they do have websites that they've identified. If you need more information, if you live out in that area, you can get more details at those websites. Moving on. I have a question. Does anyone know how to drive a boat anymore? Another shipping mishap, this time in Galveston, Texas. A barge slammed into a bridge, spilled oil into the bay, forced a shutdown of the Texas span. It's another incident involving shipping. I don't know. We saw the Baltimore Bridge completely collapse when that ship ran into it. Now, this is not on that scale. This involves a barge, not as big as that other ship, but still, I have video of it here. Hang on. That's just... Where do these guys learn to drive their boats? Crazy. Here, check this out. I shouldn't laugh. It really isn't funny. But for crying out loud. Here it is. So damage to the bridge. Wow. No injuries reported at the Pelican Island Causeway. This happened just before 10 a.m. today. I guess there were 2 operators on the barge at the time. One of the operators actually fell into the water. He was rescued. Another remained on the barge after the crash. He was rescued as well from the barge. And it was petroleum-based products that the barge was carrying. As we say, some oil did spill into the water. Pelican Island is home to Texas A&M University, Galveston, a fishing pier, and there's a naval museum over there as well. As a result of this, I guess power on campus at the university was disrupted for a time. It was later restored. Didn't take long for them to fix it. And these barges go back and forth underneath that bridge several times a day. And it just seems weird because here's another one, just the latest in a string of these kinds of incidents. You had that container ship at the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. That was back on March 6th. 6 people were killed in that incident because, of course, you had workers working on the bridge and they fell into the water and were killed when the bridge collapsed after the ship ran into it. Then 2 weeks ago, Interstate 95 in Connecticut was closed down after a tanker truck filled with gasoline burst into flames that forced the closure of one of the eastern seaboard's most important thoroughfares. Also, back in late March, there was a family out fishing on the Arkansas River, and they captured video of a barge hitting a bridge near Solisla, Oklahoma. Then, it was just in April last month, more than 24 barges broke loose from moorings. They wound up taking a free ride down the Ohio River in Pittsburgh, and they collided with the Sewickley Bridge. And, oh, we're not done. There's more. The Fort Madison Toll Bridge. I guess it's about almost 100 years old. 97. It'll be 97 years old in July. It was struck by a barge this past Thursday. It connects Fort Madison, Iowa, with Niota, Illinois, over the Mississippi River, that bridge. Anyway, this is not exactly like the Baltimore Bridge incident. It's nowhere near on that scale, but just the fact that we're getting so many of these clustered together, it always makes you wonder, right? Are you really getting a cluster of events like this, or are we just paying more attention to it and giving it more attention because we've had a major incident, and then any other incidents similar to that we would then take greater note of? Always a question. What influences, does art influence life, or does life influence art? I don't know. When we're looking at the picture of the king, I think it's going to influence the public, but not in a good way. The public reaction so far to that has been terrible, and isn't it strange how a disaster, a shipping disaster, has brought us back to that painting? Obviously, in the minds of some, an artistic disaster. Don't go away. When we come back, Derek Smith. I really like Derek. He's a fantastic guy. Freedom-oriented, for sure. Author of that graphic book, How the Prime Minister Stole Freedom. He's got a couple of books out like that. He has another new book coming out, but he's going to join us when we come back after this break to talk about an effort to recall the current mayor of Calgary that has failed. He'll explain why. He'll explain how the process worked. He'll give us his view on it. And he'll talk about his upcoming campaign to run for the mayor's chair in Calgary. He will also talk about politics in general, what the status is with politics on a national level. And this is very unique. We're going to talk about a new law, a new rule that will allow party politics to come into play and be used in the upcoming municipal election in the growing, sprawling city of Calgary. It's very unique. It really hasn't been done in Canada before. Depending on how that goes, it could have an impact on municipalities right across Canada. So you're not going to want to miss this interview. Derek has a lot of insight. He's smart. He's strategic. And we're going to talk about political strategy as well. On the other side, don't go away.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind.
Derek, welcome back to the program. Great to have you here.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me back. It's always great to stop in and have a discussion with you in open discourse. Happy to be here.
So the focus today is on Calgary politics. A very unusual, I don't know. It's not something that happens every day, an effort to recall a politician. This is just what happened in Calgary with the mayor of Calgary, but it failed. Can you explain to our viewers, first of all, why the municipality determined that this process wasn't valid?
So from my understanding, Rick, and from what I can see that went on, it's that there was certain information in terms of paperwork that was needed to be included with a certain number of votes. Now, the number of what they would claim as invalid votes was below 400. And this is a recall petition that essentially amassed over 70,000 signatures, while those signatures still fall far below the required roughly 500,000 signatures needed to recall Jyoti Gondek. What's alarming about the situation is that the mayor essentially used her position of power, so to speak, to ultimately say, well, if those roughly 400 votes are invalid, then that means all 70,000 are invalid. And that really speaks to volunteers who sat out in the cold, who took their time to amass those signatures, get the word out, and push for this lofty campaign.
Yeah, so they basically took a poll of the petition itself to determine if it was likely to be valid, and they found a certain percentage that they said weren't valid. As I was looking at this, they were being pretty technical and pretty picky about what needed to be done on paper for it to be deemed valid. Can you speak to that?
Well, I mean, there's no surprise when it comes to recall legislation. I've often said when criticizing Jason Kenney's introduction of recall legislation that while it's good for voters and while it's good for constituents, there's a lot that needs to be ironed out in terms of the rules or regulations, so to speak, when it comes to recall legislation. Now, it's of no surprise to me when you see corrupt, power-mongering politicians like Jyoti Gondek who work alongside the more labeled left-leaning side of the spectrum that we've seen this kind of abuse of the voting system for quite some time. It doesn't shock me that rather than just accept the numbers, she wants to use her authority to undermine and essentially label the people who sign these petitions as faceless. This speaks volumes to how she, of course, sees the citizens of Calgary, how she views people who are taxpayers in this town, that, of course, their voice essentially means nothing. We see that, I'm not sure if you've been following the blanket upzoning issues that are going on in Calgary right now, but, of course, more than 700 people spoke at a public hearing saying that they don't approve of this process in the city, that while they understand the pitch for more affordable housing, at the end of the day, we know that it doesn't go to more affordable housing, but the city, once again, doesn't listen to its constituents. They don't listen to what people have to say. They merely are doing whatever they please. And it raises a lot of questions now going into a federal election for me. Are we going to see this kind of trickery when it comes to Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, mainly because we've seen it in U.S. politics. We're now seeing it in municipal politics in Canada. I don't see any other reason why Justin Trudeau would stick around and want to run in another election when his numbers are essentially on the floor.
Yeah, and that really speaks to the underlying cause of all of this. It's the policies. The people are fed up with this constant push for a variety of issues, whether it's affordable housing or even the climate change emergency that was declared there.
Yeah, there's been a lot of bonkers policy declared in Calgary while also uncontrolled spending. And that's also resulted in a barren downtown, offices having to leave. They're overtaxed, they're overcharged. Essentially, when you look at income taxes across the country, people are roughly giving 50% of their income to the government to essentially waste and throw away. Again, when I go back to Justin Trudeau, we've seen his bills, so to speak, or his claims for airplane rides where food has cost excess of $100,000 on a very small trip, we'll say. When you look at the cities now and what they're spending, again, everybody's out of touch. And what this does is it undermines people's encouragement to get involved in the electoral system. It gives people less ambition to vote. I hear it all the time. And it's going to be one of the challenges I face when I run for mayor is actually convincing people that your vote still brings change. You know, we live in a society where people are convinced their vote means nothing. And when you see the corrupt actions of Arrive scam, when you see what's going on with, $8 billion slush funds, and again, municipalities ignoring the votes of people and the requests to remove bad policy, where do people feel that their vote matters? Where do people feel that they can make change? And that's a dangerous precedent we're entering.
Yeah, well, you use the word corruption, and that's on full display in many areas, but I would say the word contempt comes up here as well. They just seem to have absolute contempt for taxpayers when they fly around the world like they're royalty, not public servants.
Well, again, it's a lack of regard for the common person. What government has forgotten, whether it's provincial, municipal, or federal, is that, and I've said it time and time again, they're public servants. They're put here by the Canadian taxpayer, and they're supposed to be representing the best interests of the Canadian taxpayers. I've often said, I miss the days where the government used to just skim a little off the top and we were none the wiser. But as you even stated, they're putting it out on full display these days. They don't even care if they're caught anymore, and there's no consequences. I recently had Conservative MP Garnet Jennis on my channel, and I asked him about Arrive scam and said, we hear all these things about Dalian and GC strategies, and we're obviously spending taxpayer money to run these inquiries. Yet we're not seeing any charges. We're not seeing arrests. We're not seeing anybody facing the music for these billions of dollars of essentially our money that's being funneled into these contempt and out of whack corruption campaigns. So really, what is the point of putting these together if we're not going to see results? And ultimately he says, well, we just got to get to the bottom of it. At which point I say, we need justice. We need for them to understand that they can't just flaunt these levels of corruption in our face while we just continue to pay our taxes and pay the bills. I've heard many people saying they're not paying their income taxes out of protest this year simply because the government gives it all to the Ukraine. Now, as you said at the beginning of this interview, people are fed up. They're mad. And honestly, even as somebody entering the political realm, I'm very curious where things are going to go, because people talk about things like revolution, and while I never promote those things, I'm wondering if that's where it's going to have to get to before people start seeing results.
So after going through this process, does the recall process even have any merit, or is this just something that's a facade where, the use of technicalities and the complexity of the rules makes it really a useless process overall?
My philosophy on government is always the same. And while I like some politicians, like I've voiced my support for people like Pierre Poilievre in the past, I do believe that they're the partial solution to the problem that we're in. They're the best of the worst, so to speak, when it comes to what we move forward with in a political system. But the one thing I've always said about government is they're all politicians. It doesn't matter which party they represent. And anytime they've asked for power, anytime they've put any kind of measure in place, it's never to protect the citizens. It's always for some kind of gain on their end, or else they wouldn't be invested in putting those policies forward. When you look at recall legislation, it's a pony show. It's merely put out there to give voters the illusion that they're protected when it comes to selecting their leaders. But when you look at the requirements for said recall legislation, it's an unfathomable and very unreachable number or requirement to make. And as we've seen in Calgary, they can essentially bend the rules to their whim regardless, making it moot and really, again, dismantling the process of electoral results. I don't know where we move forward from here, but I can tell you right now that government has and always will have the best interests in government. And it doesn't seem, at least as of yet, that we're not seeing any that want to represent the people. And that's a big problem.
What was the driving force behind this? The man who got this petition going and started the ball rolling down the hill, is he connected to a political party? Was there some like a partisan aspect to this, or was this just a grassroots organic reaction to the policies that this radical mayor has been implementing?
I think it's a mix of all of those, Rick. I think what you're seeing in Calgary is Landon Johnson, the man who put this together, was, I believe, an owner of an HVAC company. Just like every other Calgarian or Albertan at this point, they're fed up. They've had enough. And I understand the implementation of recall notice. Now, I've been critical of that campaign. I've said that there were better ways to get this out if you wanted to run the gambit of making the signatures. I believe that running this recall legislation, again, a lot of people don't realize that once you put this recall legislation in place, it's a one-off. If it fails to go through, you cannot call recall again on that individual. They're allowed to live out their term. So if you're going to strategize as to how is best suited to get them out, I feel this is a campaign that shouldn't have happened in January. It's one that should have taken place during the summer months in the middle of the Calgary Stampede. And although we see a lot of visitors in Calgary, if you would have set up recall tables for Calgarians outside of the gates of the Stampede, getting signatures, amassing awareness, getting out downtown 17th Avenue during the summer months when everybody's out and around getting, their sunshine in while they can before, again, the smoke hits the city, it would be more effective if you want to actually remove the mayor. I've often said, I feel somebody wanted their 15 minutes, but at the same time, I also side to say, I understand the frustration of Calgarians, which is part of the reason I'm running for office. And when you hear about the connections to, Take Back Alberta and all these other outlets that wanted to join with Landon Johnson, well, those things didn't happen until about the halfway mark, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong, but a lot of noise about this recall legislation didn't really get rolling until a good portion of the way into the time limit in order to amass those signatures. And that was a huge misstep, a huge problem. I think if you were going to be effective again in trying to secure those roughly 480,000 signatures, this should have been planned. It should have been strategized. It should have been done over social media, build up groups, get awareness out that we're going to start a recall, rather than just putting the paperwork through on the risk of a one-off. I just feel there's better steps that could have taken place. And where it came from, again, there's a lot of missing information, but no matter who it came from or who was connected to it, I feel that there was a massive failure in terms of the organization, although we got a very good push from volunteers and concerned citizens toward the half to three-quarter mark. And I think we really could have made a dent. But again, you see how Jody took those results, made them invalid. I feel that even if we amassed those signatures, as I stated earlier, it's a pony show. They would have found any means necessary to avoid any kind of a bylaw election or recall. And I think we'd still be where we are right now.
Yeah, strategy absolutely critical, especially when you have a monumental task in front of you to collect over 500,000 signatures to make this thing valid and make sure that it's done in a way that complies with the law or the rules. So that's very difficult. One of the issues that I noticed that came up was what happens to those signatures after they're collected. Is privacy being protected? Are political parties able to get a hold of this list? And is that a concern?
I would think so. When you look at the Freedom Convoy, which I don't think we're ever going to see a grassroots uprising to the level of what we saw during that time ever again, or at least in the near future. When you look at the frozen bank accounts, when you look at people who were essentially given no options to pay their bills simply for donating as little increments as $10 to the Freedom Convoy, if you think that the city of Calgary doesn't take those lists, that doesn't look at every name on that list with their address, their email information, and all of a sudden say, we know now who was against Jody Gondek, we know who was against the machine, so to speak. I looked at it as, I didn't think the recall was going to go through to begin with. Again, from a strategic standpoint, A lot of people ask me, why did you announce your race for mayor so early? There is a lot of planning that goes into place. There is a lot of strategizing, getting people together, trying to communicate how do we best and effectively get this out in order to make a dent. And that's where my skepticism was. However, I said, as someone running for mayor, those numbers will tell me how many people are ready to get out and vote. It'll tell me how many people are truly fed up and where we can start making some headway on the work for this upcoming campaign. When it comes to, though, the machine of installed mayors, and again, I sit on the fence that I believe Jody Gondek was installed, whether people want to call that conspiracy or not. I find it very withholding that, you know, a representative for the city who was dragging behind in the polls suddenly at the 11th hour took a massive boost in votes, 175,000 people out of a city of 1.7 million to secure the seat as mayor really doesn't take a lot when it comes to voters. But it really speaks to hands in the background making things move around, that it does make me question if people are at vulnerability of being doxxed, if people are going to see some form of pushback from the city. Again, not in a physical form, but more making their lives difficult moving forward. Your guess is as good as mine as to what that means, but I guarantee you they've got that data and they're looking over it as we speak.
Absolutely. I mean, if your name appears on that petition and then you apply for a job with the municipality in any department, it might not to work to your advantage. That's for sure. When is the next municipal election?
So it's slated for October of 2025. Again, people have asked, you know, how do I get involved with your campaign? How do I donate? Unfortunately, I can't sign up for that campaign to even get my name on the ballot until January 1st of next year. 2025, when you look at our upcoming federal election and then a municipal election in Calgary, it's going to be a heck of a year for politics. It's going to be a crazy year in terms of what gets thrown out, what goes back and forth. And again, even when we look at what's coming up federally, I've said multiple times, I think when you look at the current budget, when you look at Jagmeet Singh's support of the budget, the attacks that are going on back and forth now, it's kind of like a hydra. So and even after we see a change in government, whether that be municipality, federally, or provincially for anybody, there's going to be a lot worse things to come our way, I feel, before things get better.
Now, I'm seeing that in Alberta, they're going to allow for at least one election the use of political parties at the municipal level. So this is something of an experiment that will have potentially an impact nationally across the country, depending on how this goes. How do you see this playing out? Or do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing? Any opinion?
It's never a good thing to say where you stand politically. And the reason I say that when it comes to municipalities is that municipal level is the policies that mostly affect somebody's life in terms of their property taxes, their bylaws, their services, what they're paying into, what they're getting back, more so than provincially or federally. Now, I think the problem in introducing political parties is desperation for those who are losing their grip on identification, so to speak, as to where they stand, to bring in those Gen Z voters, the teachers, the doctors, the union workers that usually support certain parties. It's a grab at straws, a desperate straw grab to try to say policy shouldn't matter. It's who I stand behind. It's who I represent. When you're running for city council, like people have asked me, where do your political alliances sit? There's 1.7 million people in this city. I have to look after 1.7 million people. Any policy I put forward has to have those bosses' interests at heart, not those that are funneling money in through businesses, through scandals, through arrangements, backdoor deals. Again, public servant has to reign true. And when you bring in political labels, political parties, it does nothing more than make municipal elections a business, so to speak. And I think it's going to cause a lot of upset and a lot of chaos.
It's interesting you use that word business, because at the municipal level, you don't have, it's not like a parliamentary system per se. So to use a party system like that, it seems to me you're just kind of layering on top a fundraising machine. Has anyone even looked at the way that system would be affected, or how the fundraising aspects of this would come into play at the municipal level if you're using party politics?
I think the reason you'll never see that is the same reason we never see Justin Trudeau in handcuffs for his multiple scandals. Again, it's become a business, and there's too many higher up elite type individuals involved in the background that it would destroy their profits, it would destroy their ideals, it would destroy their future. I've often said, when you look at politicians, if you look like Jagmeet Singh, if you look at Justin Trudeau, even Pierre Poilievre, these guys kind of remind me of the old NASCAR drivers where they could come out in their suits and have all of their representatives branded on their clothing as to who they're backing, who they support. We've seen with Jagmeet Singh, his brother works for Metro Inc. And of course, Jagmeet always goes against Loblaws anytime he's talking about corrupt CEOs. And that's merely out of a conflict of interest because he's trying to help out his brother and going after people that aren't involved with Metro Inc. It's policy and politics are now sponsored. It's now who lines my pockets the best. Again, I don't want to keep going back to my campaign because that's not the focus of this interview, but part of the reason I decided to run is I'm a citizen. I'm not lined by anybody's pockets. And while that makes my bid for mayor so much more difficult, I'm willing to run on the merits again of what's involved for the city rather than who's giving me a bonus or a kickback in order to bend the laws to fit their narrative. And that's going to be a huge problem, again, moving forward, that we need more representatives. I've said often, whether you want to run provincially as an MLA, as a school board trustee, if you feel you have good ideas, now's the time to step up to make that change, to actually do something to benefit this country. Because the more people we get involved in politics to start saying, this is corruption at its finest, it's paid government, we need to get away from that, then people are going to start to see the light. Hopefully people can then start realizing that their vote does carry weight, that they can make change. But it takes a group of like-minded people in order to push that kind of policy forward.
Right. Do you think that progress is being made? Are the people winning after, 3+4 years of this kind of government overreach that we've been living through?
Yes and no. I think that the people involved have passion. They love their country. They love everything about Canada. No matter where you live in the country, I think that people's hearts are in the right places. I've often said that, during lockdowns, I always felt like Canada had abandoned its principles, that the term Canadian just didn't apply anymore when it came to people's good nature or goodwill. However, when I turned on the TV and seen trucks going through Winnipeg, Manitoba, out in Headingley, it's like I was reminded when you saw all the Canadians on the overpasses, the signs, the trucks blaring through, the kids on CB radio saying, thank you for standing up for our freedoms. That was Canada. That's where we're at. And it showed that there are more people than you think that are concerned about this country, that are concerned about the future. The problem I see, even as a YouTube content creator, is multiple comment sections. Nothing's going to happen. My vote doesn't matter. I don't see the point. You can't vote your way out of corruption. Those are the kind of ideologies that, again, I understand people's dismay. I understand that people are tired. They're drained because politics seems to be an everyday conversation now. I was always told as a child, money, politics, and religion are the three things you don't talk about. But when you go anywhere now, everybody's talking politics. I get that aspect of it, but what people have to realize is that we need more people to speak up. We need more people to get active. So if we're going to make change, we have to stick to our principles. We have to stick to our guns. We have to learn to say no, because that's one thing I found that we've let go of in the last 20 years. We're trying to appease everybody. We're trying to be politically correct on everything and make people happy. We have to start having the ability to say, not anymore. And we're going to stay in our numbers until we see change.
Right. And you're seeing axe to tax protests, frustration out there. People are fed up with the carbon tax. They're fed up with this. I think this capital gains tax is going to have unintended consequences. We're already seeing that. We're seeing people put cottages up for sale right now. There's a flood of that happening as a result of this capital gains tax increase that is coming. Do you think Justin Trudeau is just out of touch? Because here he is still running, and he has to be the most unpopular, most hated public official, politician in Canadian history, in my estimation. What are your thoughts?
Well, when it comes to Justin Trudeau, I hear people say a lot, this guy's an idiot, he's a moron. I always say, I think he's smarter than you think he is. He's just playing the buffoon on television. He's got a lot of people in the background pulling the strings. When it comes to capital gains taxes, I stand on the fence that the boomer generation, the baby boomer generation of the 1950s, they've done their time. They've invested their money. They've been through the 80s plummet of Trudeau Sr. I think that they've earned the right to retire. They've earned the right to hang on to the money they've worked so hard for, and that they've gained any kind of money off of in terms of their financial investments, their stocks, their portfolios, in terms of property. Justin Trudeau has just spent and printed so much money and caused such rapid inflation that he doesn't want to give up his golden throne, and he wants to continue to spend. So rather than admit there's a spending problem or back down on policy, we've seen all these new lunch programs announced, home building that are essentially photo ops, constant program after program after program rolling out with no money to pay for those things because we're giving all of our money to forever wars. I think what needs to happen is that people, again, need to push back and realize that this man just wants our money to continue his lavish, rich spending. When you hear, but I'll say there's another side to that coin, because a lot of people I hear, again, I'll flat out say I support Pierre Poilievre, but people jump all over my back when I question, you hear axe the tax, you hear we're going to build the homes, we're going to stop the crime. I don't doubt those things, but what a lot of people who have rose-colored glasses don't realize when upholding Pierre Poilievre is somehow we have to pay for all of that. We have to pay for the large deficits. We have to pay for all the spending that's gone on since Justin Trudeau took office. Don't forget, this man has spent more money than all other prime ministers combined and racked up an unfathomable deficit. You can reduce income taxes, you can cut the carbon tax. The problem in the end is that we have to pay the piper somewhere. The money has to come from somewhere. It's going to be interesting to see how Pierre does that. I'm not essentially saying that Pierre's lying. I just think that Canadians may be in for tax in form of another purpose than carbon tax. Will it affect our food? Will it affect our gas? Certainly not as much as the carbon tax currently does. We might see an increase in GST. We might see more provinces encourage, provincial sales taxes. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but there's no real win at this point until we see results. And that's where, again, I've put my horse in the race with Pierre, but until I see action, until I see the actual print to paper, pen to paper policy adopted, I'm going to remain skeptical until we get to that point. But I still believe Pierre should be the next Prime Minister of Canada.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge for the Conservatives, the Liberals and the NDP. You get to have a giant party and spend everybody's money, and then you get the adults back in the room and elect a Conservative government. They have to clean up the mess, right? So they have the tough job in the end. What are the issues that you see moving forward as you begin to plan your campaign and take your run at the mayor's chair?
Yeah, the biggest issue, anytime I've spoken to people about my policies essentially are to lower property taxes. They're to lower business tax, essentially to nothing. Now, again, the money has to come from somewhere. So where do we do that? I want to cancel all the wasteful spending. I want to cancel overstaffing of city jobs that are unnecessary, studies that are being done that are unnecessary, NGOs or non-government entities that are being funded millions and millions of dollars each year for nothing, essentially. And using that money to encourage business to come back to Calgary, encourage people that Calgary is an affordable place to live. We have to work for the people while still committing to infrastructure and growth. The biggest uphill challenge is going to be, again, fighting that machine and convincing 1.7, well, not 1.7 million, not everybody can vote in the city, but those of the 1.7 million that are eligible to vote, to get out, to actually vote, to make a difference. Again, Jody Gondek took her seat with 175,000 votes. That's minuscule in comparison to what should be voting out there. And if we want change, it's going to take a lot of volunteers. It's going to take a lot of capital. It's going to take a lot of work and planning to get door knockers, to get people out there saying it's time for a change. We'd rather have somebody who's, a citizen who's looking out for the rights of citizens rather than a pig at a trough, so to speak, taking up all the benefits. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting race, and it's one that I'm very skeptical as to where the results are going to end up. However, I'd rather push back and attempt to do something than sit in my basement, make YouTube videos, and do nothing at all. So it'll be interesting to see where that election goes. And hopefully we can make a dent and make a difference. If not, at least get the word out that change is necessary.
And then back to this, federal election that has to happen at some point. Any predictions on when we might see people go to the polls?
I don't think it's going to happen until 2025. And again, you see Justin Trudeau trying to extend those dates, but in order for people to secure pensions, they virtue signal that it's because of religious holidays. It has nothing to do with that. And in fact, when it comes to that election, I talk about trickery or messing with tabulations that you saw in the United States in the last election. My concerns ride again as to, the devil could be right in front of us announcing his plan. And what I mean by that is, why is Justin Trudeau running when his own party has said he should step down, when the statistics aren't in his favor? Jagmeet Singh doesn't want to call an election no matter what, because while many people say it's because of his pension that, he's done, he wants out, he just wants his payday. I'm skeptical. You look at the polls right now, Pierre Poilievre has such an incredible lead over both of those parties. However, if we're not going to see something similar to what happened in Calgary just now, I think people need to wake up and realize that, again, this man may be flaunting his plans right in front of our faces. We may see a possibility of a corrupt version of Trudeau attempting to hold power in the next federal election. I sure hope not. I hope that, it's a free and fair election. I have to put my faith in humanity to say that, I hope for the best. But after 8 years of this prime minister locking us up, twisting laws, scandal, it's tough to have faith that things are going to work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, I keep saying don't count him out, even though the polls are the way they are. And Poilievre is so far in front. Politics, man, so much can change so quickly. And Absolutely. he must have a plan. He must have wedge issues that he's planning to use to divide people the way he did in the last election. Division, that's been, the strategy for him all along. Get people really upset, cement his base, some support, and firm that up with anger and fear. That's what I see him doing. And man, I don't know. If you're talking, maybe even the fall of 2025 for the next election, we have another year and a half to go. That's an eternity in politics.
And the destruction that can be done between now and then is unfathomable. My old man always used to say, don't count nothing until it's finished. Get it in writing, and once it's signed, then you have a deal. I think it's the same with this election. Until they close the polls, until they count and tabulate the votes, and until they declare a definitive winner, it's anybody's game as far as I'm concerned. The trickery is afoot, and people just need to be vigilant, keep their eyes open, and make sure to exercise their democratic rights and vote. I know people think it doesn't matter, but if there's one thing I can't stress enough, if you lived in another country without a democracy, without the ability to go and vote, you would miss that ability very quickly. This is our voice. We have to exercise it. We have to use it. It's part of our due diligence as a Canadian citizen. So make sure you get out there, you vote, you speak your mind, and you're heard.
Okay. Derek, is there anything else you'd like to add today or think that we might be missing?
No, I mean, look, again, corruption's everywhere. I think, again, groups need to get together, band together. You need to get online, start voicing your concerns. Don't worry so much about censorship. Don't worry about being filtered out. There are more people, again, if we talk back to the convoy days, more than you know that are in this boat that agree with you, that agree with your policies. Jordan Peterson once told me the best way you can make change is by getting involved in like-minded groups. And I think that's what's necessary moving forward. I think Canadians need to stay strong. They need to stay positive. Even in these dark times, we have to remember it's always darkest before the dawn, and hopefully the dawn's coming sooner than later, but time's going to tell, like I said, until we see a signature on paper. We just got to be vigilant and stay strong.
And just one last thing, how can people find you, get in touch with you?
Well, people can find me over on YouTube, of course. I have my main channel, Unacceptable Fringe. I'm posting videos there 7 days a week. People can always come check out. We do live streams every week as well. They can find me on Twitter at UnacceptFringe. I'm not as active on Twitter as I used to be, just because it's such a weird platform. You essentially have to pay to play these days in order to be on there, and I kind of strive back anytime a company asks for my money in order to stay relevant. But people can find me on Twitter. They can find me on YouTube. They can chat with me during my live streams. And again, we have another book coming out, hopefully by summer, a spoof from good old Dr. Seuss of Green Eggs and Ham called Just Axe the Tax. So I'm looking forward to that one. I think it's going to be a good one. Probably going to be our last one for the indefinite future. Again, with this mayoral campaign coming up, the time to put those together is going to be rough. So hopefully, again, we can sit down and chat when that comes out. But I'm looking forward to dropping that on people, hopefully, again, this summer.
Yeah, that'll be great. I look forward to that conversation and to the new book. So thank you, Derek, for
Exile. The Knights of Malta. Maverick News. Join us. The world is watching.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
I'm back. Sorry about the audio issues with that interview with Derek. At least you could hear it clearly enough to make out everything that we were talking about. What that really was my version of a kung fu movie with overdubbing. When you talk like that, I was like, wah! Wah! Just joking. I was told that I sounded like Mickey Mouse. And I thought, well, that's an improvement then. But anyway, sorry about the audio issue. We're back, though. And you know who else is back in the news? Ontario's crypto king. He's being arrested. Yes, Durham Regional Police have charged Ontario's self-proclaimed crypto king, Aidan Petersky, and his associate Colin Murphy. There was a 16-month-long investigation that has been taking place that has been happening into alleged investment fraud. This 25-year-old Aidan Petersky is facing charges of fraud over $5,000, laundering the proceeds of crime, according to the Oshawa courthouse. He has been released on bail. His parents put up $100,000 in a surety. And they're there to make sure that he follows his bail conditions. Those conditions include giving up his passport. He's not allowed to contact investors. He must refrain from making any social media posts involving financial matters, such as soliciting investments and not buying or trading in cryptocurrencies. Now, Colin Murphy, who's 27 years old, that's his associate, he has been charged with fraud over $5,000. You may recall that we ran a story about this some months ago. Petersky was beaten up at one point by people who were pretty upset with him. And he posted there was a video posted online showing him after being beaten. And he was online, went online, he presented himself as a professional streamer. And these guys came up with a lot of money. They got people to invest a lot of money in cryptocurrency, showcased themselves as very successful, very wealthy, fast cars, living the high life. But in the end, all the money that apparently was invested, what happened to it? Well, now he's in a bit of trouble. Here's a picture of him, Aaron Petersky, self-proclaimed crypto king. We'll continue to follow that through the courts. Back to the wildfire story for just a moment. Concerns even all the way down here, Yane, already in southern Ontario, about smoke from those wildfires in Western Canada, possibly making its way all the way down here. Now, I've not seen evidence of that myself where I am, but last year, for the first time in my life, I saw haze, smoke in the air from wildfires further up north that made its way all the way down here. And we also saw smoke make its way all the way to New York City, obscuring the skyline there. And we're getting into it again already. Now, in addition to all the concerns out in Alberta and especially around Fort McMurray, we're also seeing concerns tonight ongoing around Fort Nelson in British Columbia. A lot of fires out there in BC already. You've got that growing Patry Creek wildfire to the north. It's about 465 square kilometers, but and it's just 25 kilometers from Fort Nelson. Probably even closer now. And there's another fire there, a Parker Lake fire. It's only 2.5 kilometers away from Fort Nelson. So there is rain in the forecast out in that area. That could help. But they're still dealing with winds, spreading the fire. A lot of concerns out there too. So it's not just Alberta. BC has a big problem as well. And back to just backtracking on some of this stuff tonight. Because this story about King Charles, it's pretty weird. Now in the chat earlier, I don't recall who it was that made reference to Satanism, but I did receive this image. Check this out. If you take the King Charles portrait, the first official portrait of King Charles, and you flip it upside down and reverse one of the images and then put them side by side, I was told you get this. Now look at this. Is this a portrait that has Satan in a backward masked kind of way? Check this out. Do you see that in that image? So that is what was sent to me. And I think that's making the rounds online likely at this point now. Of course, as soon as something like a portrait of a king is unveiled, a lot of people are going to start to pick it apart and look at it and look for anything like that. And that's what was found. Is that an accident? Was it intentional? Pretty hard for me to sit here and think that something like that would be an accident, that the artist painted a painting and you get that if you just flip it upside down, mirror one, put them both together. No, I don't know. That doesn't look like an accident to me. That must be something that was preconceived before the painting took place. So I thought, always a chance somebody photoshopped that just to make it look like that. So what I did is I went online and I found, just in the last few minutes, the best image that I could of the painting. Just the painting sitting in the upright position, single shot. I took that, threw it into a graphics program, flipped it, and tested it, lined it all up, and this is what I found when I tried to recreate the image that I just showed you. So this is the one that was sent to me. And this is what I came up with when I did it myself. And so, yes, indeed, you can see that there's something going on there. It looks different, but I think it's because the image that I took down or downloaded off the internet, I think the edges were cropped a little bit by whomever uploaded it. So that's what was sent to me. This is what I was able to put together myself. And yes, I think that the edges were cropped a little bit. Now, I have to tell you as well, I did enhance this image a little bit with brightness, contrast, clarity controls to bring out the detail in it a little bit more. And so that affected the color, the saturation. I wanted to see the detail so that we could see exactly what it is that was being depicted here. It does look like some sort of a satanic dog to me. Does that look like a satanic dog to you? That doesn't look so much like a dog, but it looks like there are portions of the image that may have been cropped. And I think that's fair. Whatever was uploaded, in this case, was cropped off the edge. So we just have, but you can definitely see, I don't know though, like the ears here look a little different than they do here, but there's definitely something going on there. I don't know. Is that photoshopped and enhanced to make it look like something more than what was actually painted, or is that more accurate? And is that a satanic kind of image? I can definitely see it looks like a bat. You see way over there on the king's chest, and then it comes up into a head, and then down here a wing, and maybe feet. Some sort of demonic bat of some kind. That looks more like a dog to me. I'm just going to look in the comments. What do you guys think? It's standing, wings extended, says Andrew. Isabel says, this hidden in plain sight is what they do, and why, oh why the red blood? It is kind of creepy, isn't it? I have to admit, it's kind of creepy. I'm going to check on the Rumble channel to see what people are saying over there. What do you guys think? Raising Wolf says, you can see the face. Both are creepy. Lindy says, great job. Thank you. And Lindy says, yeah, she can see it right away. Stoke Teacher says, yep. Yeah. Yeah. People are saying they can definitely see it. Ugh. I don't like that stuff, man. Really, it does. It creeps me out, I have to admit. It definitely creeps me out. Don't like it at all. So some people see a bat, other people see a dog, and what do you see here? I see a dog. I just got this in the mail today. I got me a letter from Sandy. Thank you, Sandy. To Rick Walker Family Cosmopup. Maverick Friends, Maverick Media, News. Yeah, that's supposed to be Cosmo. It looks a lot like Blue's Clues, but I'll take it. And thank you for that donation, Sandy. That's extremely helpful. Really appreciate that. And folks, you can support the channel, as Sandy just has, by donating at freedomreporters.com. Here, let's put that up on the screen for you. Put it up on the screen. I hear my dog somewhere in the background. Actually, he's saying, I want to go for a walk. It's time for your walk, Rick. He wants to take me and walk me. It's true, he does. He definitely does. Here we go. You can donate at maverickdonations.com. That's the Give, Send, Go. And you can also donate at freedomreporters.com. And I thank you, everyone who has donated in the past. And actually, I was up at like, what was it? Between 3 and 4 a.m. working right in front of this computer. And I did send out some thank you messages to a bunch of people, and that was long overdue. And so I really appreciate, the support that we get, not just from people who have made donations, but just to everybody who watches every night, everybody who extends words of encouragement and kindness. Thank you. Really appreciate it. These are tough times, and it's not always easy for people to get along, especially when we're discussing difficult and divisive issues here. A lot of things we don't all agree on. There will be other things we don't agree on in the future, moving ahead. That's just the way of the world. That's part of what free speech is all about. And so I appreciate the tolerance. When I say things that people don't agree with, I appreciate the tolerance. And I try also to be tolerant of others when they say things that I don't agree with. That's just the way it works in a democracy. Now, if you do donate, and I've said this before, $60 donation or more, I can send you a hoodie with the Maverick News logo on it, or an embroidered shirt. I don't think I've got many of these polo shirts, so I'm not going to promise anybody polo shirts until I check that, because I don't know what we've got. Not very many. So I don't know what sizes we have. I only have 2 or 3 of them. But we do have those long sleeve Dickies shirts with the logo on them in various sizes still. So a $60 donation or more, and I can send you one of those, and they are really nice. They'll last forever, practically, for sure, because of the way those things are made. I love those shirts. They're comfortable, and they just nice casual shirts to wear around. And yep, got the Maverick logo on them. Or a $30 donation or more, I can send you a t-shirt, $45, and we've got these long sleeve concert style shirts with the logo on the front as well. So just tell me what size you need when you make the donation, and I'd be happy to ship those out. Oh, and we also have, excuse me, if you get one of the embroidered shirts or the hoodie, I still have some of these Batmobiles. Send you one of those along with it, while supplies last. And with that, I guess it's about time to wrap up for the evening. We're kind of getting at that point, aren't we? I will be back tomorrow night, folks. What are we going to talk about tomorrow? I don't know. I've been so busy I can't even keep track of things anymore. We've got another guest coming up in the next few days. Don't really have a specific date yet, but I think Pella Neeroth Taylor is going to join us again, probably on the weekend, or maybe Monday. I think Sunday, maybe. We'll see. We're going to talk about that Eurovision concert and a lot of political things as well. Smart guy, author, over there in Sweden. Immigration, a big issue over there, just as it is here. We'll get into that as well. So great topics coming up in the days ahead. Working on some other guests too. You never know what kind of surprise is just on the horizon. Yeah, and you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. I guarantee you this, though. I guarantee this one. The sun's going to rise tomorrow. And I'll be back here tomorrow night. Same news time, same news channel, Maverick News, where we have the antivirus programs for your mind. Love you guys. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.